Today, we're going to talk about the 8 habits that help me build wealth and how you can use these same habits too. These are the main things that I've been implementing into my life over the past couple years to really build up my savings and prioritize my financial goals for the future. Especially with the new year coming up soon, this is a perfect time to reassess what your financial goals are and also put yourself on the right path to achieve these goals in the future. So if you're interested in side hustles, increasing your income, and financial tips, you should definitely subscribe because that's what I like to talk about here. So let's just get straight into it. So the first step is to automate your savings. And I think this is one of the most important things and the best thing to start out with, because once you automate your savings and have your savings taken directly out of your paycheck, you learn to live without it. And this is the biggest tip that I can say is once you learn to live without this money, you will not miss it at all. The problem I think a lot of people get themselves into is they're used to just having their entire paycheck hit their account and then just blowing it on whatever they feel like before actually setting up the time to save first. So they just get to the end of the month or the end of the week and are like, I have nothing left from my paycheck, and kind of try to take control of it next time around. But what you want to do is get ahead of that to prevent it from happening in the first place. And that is to take out your savings when your paycheck hits. So there are a few different ways to do this. You can speak with your HR department at your job and have a certain amount of your paycheck actually deducted before it even hits your account. And this is what I would do. So the most common deduction you can take is obviously for a 401k. Most jobs do offer 401ks. If you're able to contribute to your 401k before your paycheck even hits your account, you won't be tempted to spend it in the first place. Also, a lot of employers will allow you to actually split your paycheck into different accounts before it's even given to you. If you have 2 different checking accounts, usually you're able to go to your HR department and have them deposit 50% or whatever percent you allocate of your paycheck into one account and then have the other half go into another account. This is also a really, really cool tool that you can use if you want to separate your spending account from your bills account. If this is a method that you choose to use, you don't necessarily need to do this and have 2 checking accounts. But if you already do, or if you're struggling kind of to budget and save money, this could be a really cool thing to do is just go to them and have them split your paycheck 50-50 into one account and then into the other account. And then you can already have things automated from the employer side of when your paycheck actually goes into your 2 accounts separately. When you decide to save your money first, you're actually putting your future self first and making sure that you're looking out for yourself. So for me personally, before my paycheck even hits my account, I do have a small contribution that is taken out for a 401k. And then I also have a deduction for an HSA that's taken out. And those go to pre-tax accounts before I even receive the money myself. And that's my own personal setup that I have right now. And then I take the post-tax dollars and then contribute it to other types of savings after the fact. This is probably the simplest and most common way to actually automate your savings is through a 401k deduction with your employer, and then also an HSA deduction if your employer offers that plan and if you do elect to actually have that health insurance plan. So those are the 2 pre-tax deductions that I currently have. And then I also take that money after and I still allocate it to other savings before I even look to spend it. I do contribute to a high yield savings account every month. And I do contribute to 2 investment accounts, my taxable brokerage and my Roth IRA. So those are all of the accounts that my money goes towards after I actually receive my paycheck. And then I use that amount that's remaining to decide how much I have to spend on other things that I want. The next habit is once you get rid of debt, make sure to stay out of it. This is a big thing that I see a lot of people who, especially with credit card debt, once you get into a habit of having that, you kind of normalize it in your head and kind of feel like it's always how everything has been. So you continue to do it. And I see even people who break out of debt and even get those credit card debts paid off fully, a lot of times end up going back into it. So that's the trap you do not want to fall into. Once you get yourself out of debt, make sure that you take the steps to actually understand why you got into debt in the first place and how your actions are going to determine you not getting into it again. This is obviously different if you have a mortgage or student loans or things like that. That's obviously a lot more obvious, like how you acquired that debt. But this is mainly applying to consumer debt, personal loans, and credit card debt. It's already hard enough to get out of it. So once you're out of it, make sure that you don't get back into it by assessing how you got there in the first place. And if you have to cut your credit cards up or put them in your closet, put them somewhere where you don't even have easy access to them. That's personally what I would do if I were in credit card debt or recently got out of it. I would just take the temptation completely away. Do not close the accounts, because usually closing the accounts actually does have a negative impact on your credit score. So don't do that. But what I would do is literally just remove the card from your wallet, from anywhere that you could have easy access to it, and just don't even have it be a part of your life for a period of time after getting out of debt. That's my own personal advice. Is I think it's way too easy to get tempted to just go back on spending on the credit card. And even if you haven't had major debt, even if you're talking about a few $100 or $1,000 that you've had in credit card debt where you haven't been able to pay the balance off in full, even just for a month, that still does technically count as debt, even if it's not something that has racked up over months or years of your life. So I would put all of my energy towards paying off what is a balance on the cards. And once it's done, take the card, put it somewhere where you don't have easy access to it. I would take a breathing point and actually not spend on any credit cards, at least for a period of time, before going back to using them for all the benefits that they can actually provide. The third habit that I have been working on is increasing my income. And this is kind of an obvious one. I know everyone says it, but at a certain point, you cannot save your way to wealth. It's just not possible. Yes, you can be frugal, and at any income level, it is really possible to save a lot of money. I have done it personally myself, but there is, of course, a breaking point where you just have to increase your income if you ever want to hit certain levels of savings goals. So this is what I have been prioritizing, honestly, for most of my life, but a little bit more recently with doing some delivery side gigs. That's kind of what I've been working on in the most recent times to increase my income. But I have always had more than one income stream. As far as when I got out of college and when I got my first real job, I literally had that job for a couple months before I started doing other things on the side. So I've essentially always had multiple income streams ever since having a job. And that is my biggest recommendation to anyone out there listening. Don't just have your one W-2 employee job income, even if it seems small. And I hear a lot of people saying, like, that's a waste of time. I'm not going to pursue something that's not going to like bring in thousands of dollars a month that, you know, could maybe replace my W-2 income. I think people get too caught up in trying to go for that first. And they're like, it's a waste of time. Like, what's the point? And what I have to say is, it adds up really fast. Even if you can have a side hustle that brings in just a couple $100 extra a month. No, it might not be competing in any way with your W-2 job income, but that's not the point. The point is that even a couple $100 a month extra from an additional income source is money you can put towards savings, money you can put towards investments that will then grow to more money, and just a little bit of extra money that you didn't have before that you will still have coming in, even if you lost that job today. And that's the most important thing, especially now. I think it's more important than ever to have multiple income sources. And it used to be a lot more common to just have one job, rely on a company for your whole career, even. It was a lot more common. And I think that is kind of just slowly disappearing. People are not staying at companies for 20 or 30 years. Companies are not giving out pensions. There's less loyalty. They're a lot quicker to cut you off for whatever reason. And for those reasons, you don't want to just have that one single income source. And if you get fired tomorrow, you would literally have nothing coming in. That's what you want to avoid at all costs. Even if you start a side hustle and then let's say a year later you get laid off from that job, what if you had built something up that you were making, let's say $500 a month from? Now you still have $500 a month coming in, even if you're fired, and it can at least do something for you while you look for another position. And I still think one of the most powerful tools is having a stable job and also having a side hustle income that you just only put towards savings and investments. I still think that's one of the most powerful combos that you can have because you have the stability, but you also have that extra that's coming in that's only fueling future savings and investments. The next big habit that's been helping me build my wealth is to focus on big categorical spending issues, not small $5 purchases and agonizing over those. Really dissecting my spending and looking at the main 3 categories where I spend the most money and where most people spend the most money, and then asking myself, what can I do about these? That was the best use of my time. You don't need to spend hours every week looking through what kind of coffee you bought, how much you spent on shopping, how much you spent on Amazon, the grocery store. You don't need to sit there and drive yourself crazy with hours of a spreadsheet. You just need to look at what are your biggest expense categories and how can you target those. Housing, your car and transportation, and food. Those are the major ones for most people. Just start there. I know a lot of people feel overwhelmed with budgeting or like trying to like get themselves on the right track financially. Like a lot of times it's because they think that you have to like nitpick every single thing you do. And yeah, that does sound like a big headache. And I get why people kind of just end up putting this off. And that's really the worst thing you can do too, is just seeing like tomorrow I'll do it, next week, next paycheck, at the end of this month, I'll see what I spent and then I'll do an assessment and change it next month. That is normally what doesn't work. So if you're caught in kind of spinning in that cycle, stop doing that. Just focus on your big 3 categories and focus on how you can take control over those. Can you rent a cheaper apartment? Can you focus on budget shopping at the grocery store, spending less on groceries and eating out? Can you do anything about your car expenses? Think about carpooling. Is there any public transportation you can take advantage of? Is there any way you can lower your car insurance payments? That's a big one that a lot of times you can just lower by just doing a little bit of research. I also like to use Upside, which that's like one of my favorite things to use ever. I've been using it for years. I think my lifetime cash back on there is like hundreds of dollars by now of just like free money, which is awesome. That's a big way to just get cash back little by little. So it still helps even though you're not necessarily cutting an expense. Every time you get gas, you can get cash back using Upside. So I highly recommend that. Little extra thing you can do in the transportation category. If you have a really expensive car payment and it's something you don't need, I would really look at selling a vehicle, getting a different vehicle, maybe something that's more practical. Because I know a lot of people will just like eat up hundreds or even thousands of dollars a month with car payments. And a lot of times that's like the biggest waste of money that could be used in a lot of other ways. Look into your 3 big categories and see if you can attack those. And that's really what's going to make a big impact on how much money you can free up to then spend on other things or to save. The next one to focus on is maybe can you switch up your hobbies? If you're someone who kind of has like expensive hobby taste, like I like to call it, where the stuff you like to do for fun is just really expensive, like if you just like to go out to the bars or buy really expensive drinks at clubs, golf, country club memberships, like things like that, or like luxury fitness clubs, memberships, like those are kind of like expensive hobbies and habits. Yes, the ones that are good for your health can obviously repay you back multiple times over by staying healthy. But I think a lot of times you can still cut those expenses. You don't need to go to a luxury fitness club or anything like that to actually stay healthy. Those kind of hobbies are kind of like the ones I see the most around me, at least in like my circle. A lot of people that have these things can't actually afford them. Like they cannot afford a $300 or $400 a month luxury fitness club membership or to go golfing all the time. But it's something they do anyways. Can you reassess if you spend a lot of money on recreational things every month? Is there any way you can cut that down by finding other hobbies that you enjoy? It doesn't mean you have to get rid of the things that you have and maybe the expensive hobbies that you might have, but can you at least cut back on them and maybe find other cool things to do at home or with friends that are just a lot less expensive? And that can also be a big thing if you're like very into going out. I'm pretty like, I like being at home. I like being with a few people that I know. Like I'm not a super big like go out and spend a bunch of money out doing things. But if that is you and you love to like go to events and like spend a lot on things like that, how can you like maybe narrow down your selection? So like choose a little bit more wisely. Don't just like go to some random event that you were invited to with a friend group when you don't really care. You know, like you can still spend time with your friends and make sure that people know that you want to like hang out with them without just saying yes to every like $50 to $100 whatever event might show up where everyone's just like, we're going. That can add up really, really quick. And you might not actually be spending money on things that you really love and you personally care about when you get into those habits. The next one is limit your social media time. I know everyone kind of says this, right? Like, stop doom scrolling on TikTok. And it's like, there's a reason why it's hard not to do that. Like, they suck you in for a reason. But the more you can limit your social media time where you're kind of just like wasting your life away, the better. Not only is it great for your mental health, but it's also great for your finances, because I think a lot of us get wrapped up in just wasting so much time scrolling on social media for no reason. And you could be filling your time with something much more valuable. And something more valuable could also just be stretching or meditating or taking like a 30-minute break for yourself just to like clear your mind. It doesn't always have to be filled with productivity. So that's also something I think people get really sucked into, is like always having to be productive and like being high strung. That's not what I mean about this at all, but it's more about focusing on filling your time with valuable things for you. And that's not really going to be scrolling on social media for hours at a time. Because while you're on there, you're probably seeing other people and probably comparing yourself to people who have much more than you, or people that look like they have perfect lives when we know that no one does. And you might also just be on there listening to stories people tell or random things that like don't matter at all for your life, when you could be working on something productive, or maybe going to the gym, or taking some mental health time, meditating, doing something nice, journaling, reading a book, like doing something that would just be a little bit more beneficial for you. So that's been a big one for me, is limiting the social media time. And it's funny because I was just thinking about this the other day. Just recently have started doing DoorDash, Instacart, food delivery type side gigs for the past couple months now. And it's funny because the biggest thing I noticed was I was like, all this is doing is kind of replacing my laying on the couch scrolling on my phone time. Like, but I didn't realize that until I started doing it for a couple months. And I'm like, that's really all this is doing. Like, that's how it felt. Instead of sitting at home scrolling on the, like laying on the couch, doing nothing, scrolling on my phone, I was just out doing delivery work. And I'm like, what a crazy thing to like not realize how much time I was truly wasting not doing anything that was really that healthy, productive, or good for me. And that adds up really fast to hundreds of dollars that I was out, working and making, as opposed to just laying on the couch for a few hours every day. The next tip I have is to think about something for at least a week before you buy it. Now, these are mostly going to be for just wants and things that you maybe like see online shopping or see out at a store. Try not to get sucked up into impulse purchases, because it's way too easy to do. Now, if I see something I want, for me, it's usually online shopping. I'm doing that a lot more than I am like actually physically going out and buying things and being like, I have to have that. It's mostly online stuff for me that will tempt me. Is I, first of all, assess if it's on sale or if there's any sales that might be coming up, especially now during holiday times. A lot of places will have huge sales right after the holidays, so it's good to just wait for those if you see something you want. But timing aside, it's way too easy to just think that you want something and to like hit purchase immediately, and then you just didn't even realize that you didn't think about it at all. So I like to think about things for about a week. I'll see something, or I'll sit there and like look for something to go on sale. I really like to buy like secondhand designer goods. So I like to shop on like eBay, Poshmark, and The RealReal mostly, to kind of look for like designer shoes or purses, accessories, sometimes clothes. That's my biggest like category of thing that I like to spend my money on that is in no way a need at all. So what I like to do to keep myself under control is I never buy something right away. I always wait for it to go on sale, or I keep a number in my mind of what I'd be willing to pay for the item. And if it sells before that, then I just don't buy it and it wasn't meant to be. I don't just buy something because I see something that I really, really love. I sit there and really think about it, usually for at least a week and sometimes more. So even though it can be hard, try to turn off or control that kind of impulse shopping and impulse spending, especially if you're a big online shopper and just like filling up your cart and checking out. Control that spending and really think about online purchases before just clicking buy now. The last habit that is really, really important is set goals in a stepwise fashion. I think a lot of people think about these big financial goals or they hear about like big milestone markers and it just seems so far away. It seems out of touch. It doesn't really make any sense to go from, for example, having no savings to being like, I want to have 100K or I want to have 100K net worth. It's like it doesn't seem possible, and it also doesn't seem like on track with what would make sense from where you're at. So set goals in a stepwise fashion, and this is actually what will get you to the next goal quicker than you thought. If you have no emergency fund, no savings, if you're just kind of operating out of a checking account and just like spending what's in there and kind of like on that step of like financial literacy, I guess, then it doesn't make sense for you to just set a goal of I want to have a 50K investment account. I would start with an emergency fund, start building that up in a separate savings account, in a high yield savings account, not just like a regular savings account at your bank. I would start with that. Start proving that you can save up that certain amount of money and move on to contributing to retirement accounts, stacking up that kind of money, and then moving on to brokerage and other things like that. I could make a whole separate video about what I think is the best advice for how to set up different types of savings accounts and kind of what order to do things in. I can make a whole separate video on that. But the main point of this wealth building step is to not just like tell yourself an arbitrary goal that you want when that goal takes a lot of steps to get to and you can't just jump to it or it feels impossible. And then when things feel impossible or out of touch, then you just end up not even pursuing them at all. And that's the biggest danger in this that you can get wrapped up in, is you just quit because you don't even think that sounds possible. I know that's how it felt for me, at least. Like the idea of having like $50,000 across like all accounts to me seemed insane. I'm like, how am I gonna get that? Like, just I'm working a regular job. My paychecks are really small. I'm living on my own too. So I'm paying like rent by myself. Like, how am I ever gonna get that? And it just is something that you do step by step, and it matters. Every couple $100 adds up really quickly, especially when you're investing and when growth is compounding into the equation, of course. Also, why it's important to assess your current situation so you know what your next goal should be. What is the next step for you? It's too easy to look at what everyone else is doing, see if everyone else is buying a house or buying a new fancy car or whatever it is they may be doing and being like, I have nothing near that. You need to just kind of try to block out the noise, look at your own financial situation, assess what step you're on, and then, okay, how do I go to the next step from here? And then before you know it, you'll have 25K, 50, 100K saved up. That's just how it works. Anyone who has done this knows that it takes stepwise discipline to get to these milestones. So that's my biggest advice to anyone who feels like some of these goals are just so far away for them and seem like they're not even worth pursuing because it would just take too long to even get there, is just start slow. And before you know it, you will be at these mile markers. So those are my 8 habits that help me build wealth and the habits that you should start today. If you enjoyed this video, I would love if you would give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel if you're interested in this type of content in the future. If you would like to watch any of my other videos, they will be linked up here for you to click on. I love to talk about side hustles, increasing your income, and financial tips. So stick around if that kind of content interests you.